Everybody to the May Outdoor Florida webinar presented by the Office of Greenways and Trails. As many of you know, today we are being joined by 3 guest speakers to discuss a couple different funding opportunities that are available for trail and recreation projects. And some of these are available in Florida specifically, and some are available to a wider audience. And before I introduce our speakers today, I have a couple reminders for those who are on our call. At the end of the presentation, we'll have a question and answer portion. So go ahead and hold your questions until the end or put them in the chat as we go, and we'll read them once we finish up. Please note this webinar is being recorded, so that will be available on the Florida State Parks YouTube page at the end of the week if you would like to share or watch the video again. All right, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speakers today. Kathy Corlett is going to get us started this morning, and she is calling in from the Pacific time zone, so special thank you to her for being up so early to join us today. Kathy is the Director of Strategic Communications, as well as the Trail Fund Program Director for American Trails, which is a national nonprofit that advances the development of diverse, high-quality trails and greenways for the benefit of people and communities. And before joining American Trails in her current role, she served on the board for 4 years and was also a landscape architect working in California, Oregon, and Colorado. After Kathy's presentation, we will hear from Linda and Lauren, who are both representing the Land and Recreation Grants section within the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. Linda has been a leader with DEP for over 45 years. Beginning her journey in 1975, she started under the Bureau of Finance and Accounting and later joined the Florida Park Service in 1980. Today, she holds the title of Community Program Manager for the Land and Recreation Grants section, where she oversees the operations and management of the Florida Communities Trust, Stan Mayfield Working Waterfronts Program, Florida Recreation Development Assistance Program, and Land and Water Conservation Fund program, as well as the Recreational Trails program. Speaking alongside Linda today is Lauren Cruz, a planning professional with a background in comprehensive land management, zoning and land use planning, and grant administration. She holds a combined degree in sociology and urban and regional planning from the Florida State University, and was recognized in 2019 for her assistance in the implementation of an online grant management system for the Florida Recreation Development Assistance Program. Lauren currently serves as the state coordinator for the Recreational Trails Program. We're so excited to have all 3 of these speakers here today to share some insight with us on their respective funding opportunities. And with that, I think we can go ahead and get started. So Kathy, if you'd like to go ahead and share your screen, the floor is yours.
Thanks. All right. So I just thanks for the introduction. As you mentioned, I'm the Trail Fund Director at American Trails, and if you're not familiar with American Trails, we're a national nonprofit, and we've been around since 1988, and we host the International Trails Symposium every 2 years that brings together the entire trails community. We just had our big symposium, we call it the International Trails Summit now, that was in Reno a couple weeks ago. Over 900 people came to that. And it's really exciting to be part of the trails community and represent those who design, build, and take care of trails across the whole country. So I'm going to be giving you a quick summary of the 2 grant programs we have as part of the Trail Fund. We have the Trails Capacity Program and the Legacy Trails Program. So we have only begun funding trails last year. We launched the first one with just a $50,000 fund, and we called it the Trail Fund. We were able to award all of that money to 7 projects in 2022. And then we launched a second program also last year. So then we decided to call the 2 programs different names, and the Trail Fund is sort of the umbrella name. So if you heard of the Trail Fund last year, it's become now the Trails Capacity Program. In 2023, we have a $70,000 budget for that, approximately a little more than that. We were able to award to 7 more projects in 2023. And then the Legacy Trails program we launched, which is funded by the United States Forest Service, and it's for projects on Forest Service land. So I'm going to try to give you the comparison of the two different grant programs. The application cycle is very similar, so you won't have to worry about two different dates, but they have a couple different differences. So the Trails Capacity Program, the smaller one, is a nationwide program. It's to try to strategically improve the abilities and capacity of the trails community as a whole. So it's for funding trail projects on public or private land to help grow the number of trained trails stewards, people who know how to maintain and build trails. And we haven't fully funded this program for next year, but we're hoping to open it for applications approximately October this fall. We anticipate being able to award grants to smaller projects, and we're excited to attract applications from across the trails community. It's a very competitive program, as we really have received far more applications than we can fund. So of the 14 we've been able to fund, we received 291. So we were able to fund 14 of those in this first 2-year cycle. So if you're wondering what would make your project application stand out, keep in mind, we're looking to leverage this money as far as possible. So if you can integrate education, research, trail maintenance, and stewardship into one project, you could make a pretty good value proposition. And we don't require a match for this one, but it has been something that's made projects more competitive to have that, because we're looking for corporate funders to support this program. So they always look to see how far we've been able to leverage it with a match. So would like to say we open this to not people who can only don't have to have a cash match, but it still does matter. So quick summary of who we funded in 2022. You can see just at a glance, what often very small projects from $5,000 to $10,000. We can award, I think we could go as small as $2,500. Just if you just need that much money, consider applying to this grant. And you can look at our website to learn a lot more about these projects. We have an interactive map that you can click on, and you can click on every project that was awarded and learn more about it, and every project that wasn't awarded. Here's a quick summary, a demonstration of what one of the 2022 awardees was able to do. So Wild Alabama, they were able to accomplish 78 miles of trail maintenance, and they also offered a backpacking 101 class and an environmental education class. So they did a lot of stewardship, they did a lot of teaching, and were able to accomplish a pretty sizable amount of maintenance. So this is one slide from our Trails Capacity Fund Impact Report. We're going to be putting that on our website very soon. And so check back for that. You can learn more about what the awardees accomplished in 2022 and give yourself a sense of what the most competitive projects look like. For 2023, these are the projects we were able to award. For the most part, they haven't really started their season of trail work yet. We're really grateful to the Bronco Wild Fund for giving us a lot of corporate support for this. All right, switching gears, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Legacy Trails program. So this one is restricted to projects that are on Forest Service land. You can apply if you're a nonprofit, if you're a business, or a non-federal agency. Most of the applicants last year were 501c3 organizations. Before applying, it's important to coordinate your project with a local Forest Service line officer. You need to get a letter of support from them. For instance, that might be the district ranger. So this grant does require some match, but you aren't required to have any of it in cash. So keep that in mind. Volunteer participation is strongly encouraged, so a large in-kind match is going to make you more competitive. If you have a larger project in mind, you can apply up to $100,000. And if you have a smaller project to fund, keep in mind that we do consider smaller projects and larger projects in sort of separate pools, so you won't have to compete against a large project if you apply with a small project. And you can spend the money over 2 field seasons. We have an oversight and evaluation selection committee that's represents a number of nonprofit organizations across the trails community, because this does fund projects that are motorized or non-motorized. So we look to try to award the money in proportion to what the National Forest Service trails on the ground actually are. And this grant is, the reason for this grant that we have the Forest Service money is because there are over 160,000 miles of trails, 7,200 trail bridges, and 370,000 miles of roads that are on Forest Service land. And those go through a variety of ecological settings, many soil types, and they're all aging. They were built to lower design standards and often over 50 years ago. So these roads need repair and they can break apart. There are old culverts, and this can, increase the sediment load in the streams, which can block the stream flow or just in other ways be harmful to aquatic species. So one important goal of this program is to address the backlog of deferred maintenance on Forest Service roads and to improve the condition of Forest Service trails. And so we look to award projects in each of the 10 Forest Service regions. And again, with this, you can go on our website and there's a more detailed slideshow that tells you more about step-by-step how to apply for this grant. It's a little bit involved, but it does, it's open to a whole variety of different types of projects. So if you have a project, just think about the place where the trail and any kind of water body or stream will cross. That's a focus. So in order to improve resilience to weather events or flooding or other natural disasters, to restore fish passage, relocate trails for greater resilience, converting roads to trails, building trail bridges, decommissioning unauthorized trails, decommissioning closed trails. Of course, after public comment was done, there's a whole NEPA process, which I don't want to get a lot of detail into right now, but you may be aware of that. And with a larger goal of protecting watershed health and public drinking water. So what we awarded for this year with this grant, you can see that it was important that, the largest categories of projects funded involved addressing the backlog of deferred trail maintenance and improving trails that reduce long-term maintenance costs. So this was, done, the projects we funded are adding, repairing, replacing structures such as log bridges, and other ways improving the trail stream crossing to reduce erosion, and improving aquatic habitat. You can see this, we awarded projects in all 10 Forest Service regions, and we reserved a certain amount of our budget for small projects. So there were 38 total projects awarded, and 23 of them were small ones under $20,000 or between 20, under $20,000. And when we looked at to evaluate proposals, we look at the sustainability factors. So that means the triple bottom line. Does it have social support, inclusion, access? Is it broad enough to reach everyone, those who might not traditionally be trails users? Does it have, what's the economic aspect of the project? Does it have local support economically? Will it support the local economy? And how likely is this money going to be spent in a way that's going to reduce long-term maintenance? Of course, we also look at the environmental impact. So if we're going to remove, relocate, or make the design of a trail more resilient, it's going to have a high impact in terms of protecting the environment. That one's going to rank higher than ones that simply address routine maintenance or deferred maintenance. So, of course, we also we give special consideration with this grant to projects that positively impact listed animals or insects, species, aquatic insects. And we look at users that the projects serve. So many of these projects have multi-use trails, and some were both in and out of wilderness. And there's a whole lot more on our website. You can go and find out more about what we do to serve the trails community, from providing insurance to helping fund research, helping craft advocacy messaging. We're working on a funding clearinghouse. So if you sign up for our e-newsletter, then you'll always hear about any trail funding opportunities that we hear about. And that's the end of my presentation. So please feel free to reach out, and I'm excited to have the opportunity to present. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Kathy. Again, we are going to have time for questions at the end. So if you do have questions about Kathy's presentation, go ahead and save those for the end of the webinar. Lauren, if you want to go ahead and get your presentation pulled up, we will go ahead and move on. And you can go ahead and stop screen sharing, Kathy.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Linda Reeves, and I am the program manager for the Land and Recreation Grants section. Joining me today is Lauren Cruz, our state coordinator for the Recreational Trails Program and the Readiness and Recreation Initiative Program. Our agenda for today's webinar includes an introduction to the Land and Recreation Grants section, an overview of Florida Communities Trust, Florida Recreation Development Assistance, Land and Water Conservation Fund, and the Recreational Trails programs with examples. And also at the end, as we've already shared, we will be providing an opportunity to answer any additional questions. So let's get started. The Land and Recreational Grants section promotes and fosters partnerships to enhance and sustain Florida's natural and cultural resources and provide increased outdoor recreational opportunities for Florida's residents and visitors. We are housed within a division of state lands. The LNR section administers state and federal funded grant programs, including, as we were stated, Florida Recreation Development Assistance Program, the Florida Communities Trust, Land and Water Conservation Fund, Recreational Trails Program. These are grant programs which provides funding assistance for acquisition of recreation, conservation, and working waterfront properties, and the development of public recreational facilities. The LNR Grants website provides information regarding program guidance, applications, reporting requirements, and webinar announcements. This map demonstrates a visual representation of all of our staff assignments for each Land and Recreation Grant program. There are several grant opportunities available, including Florida Communities Trust and Open Space, the Florida Communities Trust Stan Mayfield Working Waterfront Program, the Florida Recreation Development Assistance Program, Land and Water Grant Fund Program, the Outdoor Recreational Legacy Partnership Program, the Readiness and Environmental Protection Integration Program, and the Recreational Trails Program. For additional contact information, please visit our website. Now we'll begin to talk a little bit about the Florida Communities Trust. Each applicant for the Parks and Open Space Grant Program includes local governmental entities and eligible nonprofit organizations as outlined in our program rule, chapter 62-18 Florida Administrative Code. Project sponsors may submit one application per project site. Each applicant may apply up to $5 million per cycle, regardless of the number of applications. Applicants are required to meet a 25% match requirement, with the exception based on population and category. Project sites as defined in 62-18-002, Florida Administrative Code, with more than one parcel are required to be adjoining public ownership. The Florida Community Governing Board will consider applications from applicants with overdue stewardship reports, which must be received or approved by the FCT staff within 1 year of the application deadline. The two main requirements for the FCT sites, once acquired and developed, that the project is in accordance with is in accordance with the declaration to public use and declaration of restricted covenant, and it is approved management plan. An example of a FCT acquisition with focus on trails and connectivity has been awarded to the city of Palm Coast. Through funding assistance from the Park and Open Space Forever Grant Program, the city of Palm Coast has acquired 55.770 acres known as the Palm Coast Greenway. Awarded in 2021, the city received $4.9 million in grant funds, which was matched with $3.3 million in local funds for a total acquisition cost of over $8 million. As a component of the management plan in the DDRC, the city was required to develop trails and trailhead facilities which connects with the citywide bike trail system. All requirements of the management plan in DDRC were completed in 2019. Pedestrians and bicycle access to the project site is promoted through provisions of pedestrian-oriented walkways, bike stands, and other bike facilities that link with the adjacent residential neighborhoods. Now we'll go and discuss a little bit more about the Florida Recreation Development Assistance Program. The Florida Recreation Development Assistance Program is a competitive state-funded grant program that provides financial assistance for acquisition or development of lands for public outdoor recreation. Our rule that governs the program is Rule number 62D-5 Florida Administrative Code, outlines the rules that governs the program. It is a great resource of programmatic information, including general requirements, application requirements, processing, application evaluation criteria, grant administration, and compliance responsibilities. Each applicant includes all county governments, municipalities in Florida, and other legally constituted governmental entities with the responsibility for providing outdoor recreational sites and facilities for the general public. The maximum grant request may not exceed $200,000. Matching funds are required for projects exceeding $50,000, and you can find this as defined in section 288.060656 of the Florida statutes. Establishes the Florida Rural Economic Development Initiative, which is kind of known as READY, to better serve the Florida economically distressed rural communities. Eligible rural opportunities, ROA, as identified in the Florida Department of Economic Opportunities, may submit a waiver to waiver the match. An applicant request grant funds may be revised by the department due to the availability of program funds. Grant awards are continued upon an annual appropriation from the Florida legislature. Applicants must have and demonstrate adequate site control of a project sites and are able to construct, operate, and maintain the area for the terms required by the FERDAP rule and grant agreement. The city of Niceville recently completed Turkey Creek Park Water Recreation Use Facility, which was awarded funding as a component of the 2021 FERDAP recommended priority list. This developed facilities from this project assisted in supporting the Florida Blueway system. The city received $108,750 in grant funds to construct a canoe/kayak launch, observation platform, fishing platform, and elevated walkways. At a total cost of $140,000, the city matched the grant award at 25%. Additional renovations to the parking area were completed as a component of this project. In addition to the city of Niceville's acquisition of the Turkey Creek Park was funded also with funds from Florida Communities Trust and multiple grants from the Preservation 2000 program and the Parks and Open Space Florida Forever Grant Program. In total, the city received $1.5 million in grant funds to acquire 84.160 acres and matching $750,000 in local funds at the total acquisition cost of $2.2 million. As a component of the management plan in the DDRC, the city is required to develop extensive recreational facilities, including the kayak, the canoe launch, fishing observation platform, campsites, and nature center, and many others. It is also required to plant 10 acres of disturbed uplands as a native vegetative and 750 feet of disturbed shoreline with native vegetation. Next, Lauren Cruz will provide you with an overview of our federally funded programs and provide additional information on the grant application cycle.
Thank you, Linda. Good morning, everybody. My name is Lauren Cruz, and as Linda earlier stated, I am the Recreational Trails Program Coordinator, as well as the new Readiness and Recreation Initiative. Let's begin with a look at the Land and Water Conservation Fund. The Land and Water Conservation Fund, or LWCF program, is a competitive federal grant program authorized by Congress that provides for the acquisition or development of land for public recreation. Land and water funds are appropriated by Congress to the Department of the Interior and then awarded to the National Park Service. And the National Park Service allocates these funds to state agencies as a grant program for state and local governments. It's administered in Florida at the Department of Environmental Protection. Rule Chapter 62D-5 Florida Administrative Code outlines all of the rules that govern this program. It is also a great resource for programmatic information, including the application requirements and scoring criteria. The Land and Water Conservation Fund Manual sets the administrative procedures and requirements for land and water federal assistance to the states. Eligible applicants include county governments and incorporated municipalities of the state of Florida and other legally constituted local government entities with a legal responsibility for the provision of outdoor recreation sites and facilities for the use and benefit of the general public. Grant thresholds are established annually and dependent upon funding allocated by the National Park Service. Project sponsors are required to meet a 1-to-1 match ratio. Applicants must have and demonstrate adequate site control of their proposed project site and that they're able to construct, operate, and maintain the area for the period of time sufficient to satisfy the administrative code and the Land and Water Program Manual. Permissible uses of funds include the acquisition of land and waters or public access to them for recreational purposes, the development of outdoor recreation and supporting facilities, or a combination of both categories. Walton County recently completed the Choctawhatchee Paddle Trail at the Calford Landing site, which was awarded funding through the 2016-2017 Land and Water Recommended Priority List. This project supports the state Blueway system with additional trailhead facilities. The county was awarded over $196,000 in grant funds and met the 1-to-1 required match ratio with a total project cost of just over $393,000. The Choctawhatchee River Blueway is a Florida designated paddling trail, and these newly developed facilities provide the only camping accommodations for a 10-mile stretch. In addition, these grant funds were used to construct screened-in shelters, a boardwalk, loading docks, ADA compliant canoe and kayak launches, kayak racks, and install benches and renovate the restroom that was existing on site. Next, we're going to discuss the federally funded Recreational Trails Program. The Recreational Trails Program is a federal grant program funded by the Federal Highway Administration and administered at the state level by the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. RTP provides financial assistance for the development and maintenance of recreational trails, trailheads, and trailside facilities. These funds can be used for both motorized and non-motorized trails with either a single use or a diverse use category. It's governed by Rule 62S-2 of the Florida Administrative Code. And similar to the other grant programs, this is also an excellent resource of programmatic information, including the applications, scoring criteria, site dedication requirements, and many others. Eligible applicants for these funds include municipal, county, state, or federal government agencies recognized state and federal Indian tribal governments and organizations registered as active Florida nonprofit corporations who have an active agreement with a government agency to develop public lands. Grant thresholds are established annually and dependent upon funding allocated by the Federal Highway Administration. Project sponsors are required to meet match ratios that are listed in the administrative code, which are 80-20, 60-40, or 50-50. Applicants must have adequate site control for their proposed project site and be able to construct, operate, and maintain the area for the term required by RTP and the executed grant agreement. For RTP projects on land owned by an applicant, that term is 99 years. And for sites owned by someone other than the applicant, that term is 25 years past the date of project completion. Permissible uses of funds include the development, renovation, maintenance, or construction of trails and trailside facilities and trail linkages, as well as the purchase of trail construction or trail maintenance equipment. The City of Orlando recently completed the Boardwalk at Orlando Wetlands Park project, which was awarded funding through the 2019-2020 priority list. The city was awarded $390,000 in grant funds and met the 50-50 match ratio to earn the highest eligible application points with a total project cost of $780,000. Excuse me, gotta clear my throat a little bit. The Orlando Wetlands Park is over 1,600 acres. It is a man-made wetland designed to provide advanced treatment for reclaimed water from the city of Orlando and other local cities. The RTP funds were used to construct a new boardwalk named Cypress Boardwalk, which allows visitors to approach a rookery area that was not previously accessible. Additional funds were used to provide renovations to over 2.5 miles of existing pedestrian trails and enhance over 3.5 miles of equestrian trails. To complete this morning's webinar, let's take a moment to discuss grant application cycles, webinars, and some previously funded projects. The upcoming Land and Recreation grant cycles will be officially announced on the Land and Recreation Grants website, as well as through the Florida Administrative Register. The image embedded in this slide contains information on all of the upcoming Land and Recreation grant cycles that will be hosted over the next calendar year. A copy of this flyer will be available on our website later this month. Interested parties can sign up for alerts from the FAR regarding application cycles, webinars, and public meetings by visiting their website and selecting the subscribe for notifications section. Prior to the opening of any of our Land and Recreation grant cycles, staff will host a webinar to provide interested parties with information on successfully completing an application. These online workshops serve as a tool to provide prospective applicants with information on the application forms and required attachments. Webinars, workshops, and any other public events will be announced on the Land and Recreation Grants website as well as the FAR. Our next grant application cycle will be held, our next webinar will be held on May 24th to discuss the new Readiness and Recreation Initiative. This program provides an opportunity for applicants to apply for a one-to-one mixture of land and water conservation funds, as well as readiness and environmental protection integration, REPI federal funds. The application cycle will be held from June 1st to June 15th. And you can visit our website for additional information. A wealth of information is available online regarding previously funded projects for all of the Land and Recreation grants. We have several databases available, some of which are federally funded by the program's awarding entity, and others are created and maintained in-house at DEP. For the Florida Communities Trust, the Florida Communities Trust Parks Directory provides information on parcels acquired through FCT funding. It allows for the ability to search by region, name, or selected amenities. For the Florida Recreation Development Assistance Program, the Florida Outdoor Recreation Inventory contains information and an inventory map for projects awarded FERDAP funding, as well as other grants available through DEP and additional resources. The Land and Water Conservation Fund has an interactive map of historically funded projects, which is available through the NPS website. And the Recreational Trails Program has a nationwide database, which is funded by the Federal Highway Administration, and that includes previously awarded projects, state funding profiles, and an image library. That's going to conclude our presentation, and I believe that Annabelle will take it away for any questions that you all may have.
Yes, thank you so much, Linda and Lauren, for going through that presentation. We are going to move into our question and answer portion. So we have a couple to get started here, but if anyone has more questions, go ahead and put them in the chat and we will get to them at the as we go through. So our first question is going back to Kathy. Could you explain a little bit more about the in-kind, the allowing of in-kind matching for the grant, and would that include like the value of volunteer hours?
Yeah, good question. It definitely does include, that's what we're talking about, is putting a number on how many volunteer hours, and you can use the standard rate. I think it's something like $29 an hour to estimate what your volunteer involvement will be. That's considered your in-kind match. You can also match with other in-kind things like staff time.
Gotcha. Thank you. Let's see, our next question here. For the opportunities, and maybe all three of you could answer this to your respective grants, but for the ones that require the match, can that match be from multiple sources? For example, other grants, a nonprofit that has raised funds, combined with government funds, or are there any requirements on what the match funding, the source it needs to come from?
I can go first, I guess.
Okay.
It's pretty unrestricted on our the match for the Trail Capacity Fund. For the legacy one, that match can be any kind of cash as long as you haven't spent it already, but it cannot be federal money because this is a federal program. So you can't. That's the one thing you can't use as a cash match, is any other federal funding, unfortunately.
All right, thank you. Lauren and Linda, do you want to speak for some of your opportunities?
To kind of summarize what our matching requirements are, it all depends on which program you're applying for funds for. So if you have that as a specific question to one of our programs, at the end, we'll share our email address so you can ask us more specific questions, because it does vary based on the programs or the federal requirements.
Correct, and each of those is outlined in the codes that were referenced in the presentation. I can tell you that for the Recreational Trails Program specifically, it's cash or in-kind services. It cannot be matched with other grants or land value. Federal agencies can match their funds, but there has to be 10% left over that cannot be matched with federal funds. So that has to be working with a nonprofit, or have sort of donated hours, something else that fits that 10%. And that is all outlined in our guiding rule as well.
Okay, thank you. I think Kathy might have just answered one, but I'll go ahead and read it out loud. Someone asked, in Flagler County, a lot of our forest land is privately owned. Is there a way to get some of the Forest Service money to help trails through these areas where the owner is willing? But Kathy has responded that the Legacy Trails program is specifically for projects on U.S. Forest Service land. If anyone else had the same question. Let's see. Would you guys be able to go over some common mistakes that you see in applications that prevent the application from being funded?
For the grant programs that are administered under our program area, one of the biggest problems that we've seen that would make an applicant ineligible is an incomplete application, not supplying the supplemental documentation or supporting documentation for the program requirements. One of the major things is that the applicants are not sharing with us the sufficient documentation for site control. So if those would be the key things, in my opinion, that would be the reasons that we would determine ineligible would be the site control and not supporting documentation to substantiate what we're looking for to give them the points that's needed to move forward with the actual award.
Correct. And not all of the land and recreation grants have a deficiency period, but for those that do, interested applicants will receive a formal deficiency report. Responding to that report is mandatory so that our staff can ensure that the project is eligible. And for some of the programs, failure to respond to the deficiency report causes your application to become ineligible to compete for funding for that cycle.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you. And Kathy, you want to go
Oh,
next?
yeah, for our applicants for the well, for the legacy program for the Forest Service money, one thing people really need to keep in mind is you've got to coordinate with your local line officer, talk to the Forest Service. They need to already have approved that they need to be aware and approving of the project because they're going to be your partner on this project. They will not be awarding the money. American Trails does administer the program, but you need to coordinate with that Forest Service person to make sure they're also on board with this project moving forward. Also, applicants need to demonstrate that they already are a nonprofit organization. We can award money to sort of informal volunteer organizations, and it's best if you are the applicant is the 501c3 and not using a pass-through. That just gets too complicated. So those two things are pretty important.
Okay, great, thank you. One more question here. So I know a lot of folks joining us there from nonprofits. Do you have any tips or advice, or maybe a success story you've seen where a nonprofit works with a local government to apply for grants? Or is it generally, and maybe this is more for the DEP grants, or do you generally just see either the nonprofit applying or the government applying? Is there kind of room for that collaboration in the application?
To reiterate a bit of what Linda said, and I hate to give you all a blanket information just because we do have several different funding opportunities here, it's really going to be grant specific. Not all of them allow nonprofits to apply, and the recreational trails program does, but you have to be in active agreement with the land managing agency to develop those funds on public, or develop those facilities on public land. So it's really going to be for us program specific. And feel free, if you would like to reach out to us on any of those with specific projects that you're thinking about, we can sort of review for you and see which program might be the best fit.
And Kathy, if I could just chime in here for a second. If you're reading our rules or going to our website and you're unclear about whether or not you're an eligible applicant or not, make sure that you're looking at the submission cycle and giving us an opportunity up front to help you determine that, or to help you clarify whether or not you're an eligible applicant, because we don't want you to jump into the application cycle and submit an application when you are not eligible, or had you just added this to it. So we do like to offer a lot of technical assistance up front if you're interested in submitting applications for any of our programs.
Got it, yes. All right, well, I don't see any other questions here in the chat. I do just want to say that, again, this was all recorded, so this will be sent out to everyone who registered for the webinar today, and a copy of the presentations will be sent out as PDFs. So if you missed something and you want to go back, you will have the opportunity to do so. Just a couple more things as we finish up today. I want to say thank you again to Kathy, Linda, and Lauren for joining us and their great presentations. Thank you everyone for tuning in. And I will be sending out a survey about our webinar today, along with a link to the recording in the next few days. And we do have signups available through July now on our website for future upcoming webinars. So go ahead and sign up if you'd like to continue joining us. If there's any questions, feel free to reach out to us at Office of Greenways and Trails at floridadep.gov. And with that, we're going to wrap up. Thank you again, and we'll see you next month.